So until today, I haven't heard anybody connect Bitcoin and the internet to this viral quote. You might have heard of this one before, okay? Hard times create strong men create good times create weak men create hard times. So this quote has kind of captured the cultural zeitgeist over the past few years because many people believe we are living through hard times. Many people believe we are in the midst of an empire collapse. And this original quote actually came from a 2016 book named Those Who Remain. It was written by Michael Hopf. But what if we apply this same lens and framework onto Bitcoin and the internet? Many people are beginning to realize that we could be trending towards hard times on the internet, okay? Everything we do, say, and watch is being surveilled and taxed by Big Brother. So let's now apply this popular quote onto Bitcoin and the internet. So hard times create strong tools. Strong tools create good times. Good times create weak tools, and weak tools create bad times, okay? So this is a fascinating little comparison, and today we're going to dive through each step of this 4-step framework, okay? So what is the first part of a cycle? It is hard times create strong men. So in Michael Hopf's original 2016 book, he was actually referring to the fact that complex systems actually tend to get stronger when they survive traumatic events or a crisis, okay? So, and obviously many people have applied this 4-step quote or framework onto the 4th turning cycle. We did cover that 90-year generational cycle in a video a couple of weeks ago. I'll slap a link for that one up there if you want to watch that. But let's now apply this to Bitcoin and the internet. So hard times create strong tools. So what exactly does Giacomo Zucco mean by hard times create strong tools? Well, he was actually alluding to the fact that the internet got built in quote unquote hard times, okay? So in the hard times of the 1980s and the 1990s, we built the internet, okay? We were going through a potential nuclear war threat with the Russians as the Soviet Union eventually fell in the 1990s. So the internet was built in such a kind of nuclear resistant and decentralized manner that it would withstand any sort of nuclear attack that many people speculated we could potentially see back in that 1980s and 1990s Cold War. So it was the hard times that contributed to creating strong tools. But what happens next? What is the second step in this framework? Well, the second step in the original framework is strong men create good times. So going back to Hopf's original 2016 quote and book, it's pretty self-explanatory, okay? The strong men who got us out of the hard times now create good times. But in the good times, people do become a little bit complacent. And when we apply this second step onto the Hopf cycle of the internet, the new analogy that we have is strong tools create good times, okay? So what is an example of good times in the growth of the internet? Well, after that 1980s and 1990s kind of hard times era, we defeat the Russians, okay? The Soviet Union crumbles apart, and we obviously have the rise of the internet bubble in the late 1990s. That drove the largest rally in the NASDAQ, and everything that you saw in society naturally had a .com after its name, okay? All of the new companies were trying to associate themselves with the internet, and it was the new emergent trend that everybody was adopting, okay? This was the good times of the internet, but it did lead to something very interesting, and that is the third step of this quote and framework, and that is good times create weak men, okay? So again, going back to Hopf's original 2016 framework, he actually says that the low stress equilibrium that we found in those good times eventually is not optimized for stress resistant, okay? So centralization, specialization, growth, and convenience replace decentralization, redundancy, and security, okay? Now, when we do apply this to the internet, our new kind of modified quote for number 3, or step number 3 in this framework is good times create weak tools. So after the burst of the internet bubble in the early 2000s, the internet bubble did kind of penetrate society, okay? Everybody began to get on board the internet, but when that mass adoption did come, most people opted for the more convenient options, the less stress-resistant options. Essentially, everything became centralized, more trusted, and we allowed these huge, big companies and mega corporations to take all of our data and privacy at the expense of the convenience that they did offer, okay? Now, this leads us into the final step of this cycle, and that is weak men create hard times, or weak tools create hard times. So in Hop's original 2016 book, he's actually referring to the fact that the concentration and these systemic risks that we do build up by going after these centralized options eventually increase the probability that we are going to see a big crisis, traumatic events, or anything very catastrophic. So the internet has essentially become very centralized and very captured today. And many people are kind of shrugging this off, okay? They're kind of saying, look, lots of people around the world have internet today. There are far more opportunities today than there was 20 or 30 years ago. And that is all true, but all of this centralization and convenience that we have kind of sought after has come at a serious cost, okay? Today, the internet has essentially become monopolized, it's centralized, there's corruption and there's exclusion and abuses absolutely everywhere, okay? Essentially, we are trending towards a very, very, very dangerous path in the digital age if we do continue to just opt for the convenient options, okay? Our governments and central banks are not mincing their words, okay? Central bank digital currencies are coming and they want to heavily kill encryption and free speech on the internet. Look at all of the acts and the policies trying to get enforced in Europe right now. Companies like Signal are being asked to put in backdoors by various different governments in Europe, okay? We need to be very, very careful about where we go next with the internet. But is there hope? How does Bitcoin potentially just penetrate this little cycle and get the internet out of hard times and potentially gives it the strong tools that it needs? We're going to answer all of those questions in just 1 minute, but I wanted to first give credit where credit is due, okay? This video is based off an amazing article written by Giacomo Zucco. It is actually titled Bitcoin and the Hop Cycle of the Internet, and you can find this essay in the edition 3 of the Bitcoin Times. For those who have been paying attention, you might be able to see it just over my shoulder right there. And you know what? I'm actually going to grab it and show it to you guys. So you can see here that edition 3 of the Bitcoin Times is actually titled Bitcoin and the Legend of Prometheus. And there are a number of other great authors who have contributed to this edition. You have essays from Jeff Booth, Parker Lewis, Jimmy Song, Eric Kaysen, and Alex Spetsky, all within the 3rd edition of the Bitcoin Times. If you guys wanted to actually get your hands on one of the only 2,100 copies that will ever be printed of this, you guys can check out the link in the description of today's video, and you can get 21,000 sats of this puppy or any Bitcoin Times edition that you might like. If you use promo code CoinBeast, you can see I've got edition 4 and 5 over on the bookshelf as well. But let's get into wrapping up this video. How does Bitcoin get the internet out of the hard times it is currently going through? So Giacomo believes that Bitcoin has been created to mitigate the hard times made of the internet, censorship, digital surveillance, and financial exclusion that we are currently living through, okay? Bitcoin not only can, but it must learn the lessons that the partial centralization of the internet have taught us. So Giacomo says, by learning from the past, we can avoid similar traps and we could go a long way toward also helping re-decentralize the whole internet infrastructure all over again. But we do need to actually learn from the lessons of the internet. We need to be very careful, okay? From a user point of view, we should not be trusting these third-party custodians like Mt. Gox, okay? Using a third party to hold our private keys is convenient, but fragile, okay? And Giacomo leaves it on a great little quote. He says, bad times are coming again to remind us of the price we may pay in the long run for our convenience that we are opting for in the short run. It's time to build stronger tools again. So there you have it. That is Bitcoin and the hop cycle of the internet. What do you guys think about that one? Do you think Bitcoin can actually potentially re-decentralize the internet? I am personally very hopeful, even though we do have the world's largest asset managers slowly infiltrating the space with some very interesting terminology. If you guys are not aware about how the Bitcoin BlackRock ETF could potentially be an attack on Bitcoin, we did recently record a video in that one, and you can find the link to that one right there. But if you're after a more optimistic video, and if you want to learn a little bit more about who I believe is the next Bitcoin country, you can also check out the video that we recently recorded looking at the government of Oman's $1.1 billion investment into Bitcoin. You can find a link to that one right there. And with all that said, hope you guys have a great day. And I hope you guys love the 2 videos I've slapped up on screen right now. I will see you all in the next one.